Very good evening from the KTN News Center this Wednesday night. Today is the 22nd day of October 2014. On the program tonight, we train our cameras on Kenya's latest bid to disengage from the International Criminal Court.
Also tonight, we are asking a question. Do you have an underage house help in your house? Are you aware that you're causing trouble with the law? We'll be seeking to answer this, of course, with the help of a lawyer, and our focus will be on a painful story that you need to watch from the county of Nakuru. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Linda Ogutu. Our sign language interpreter at the bottom end of your screen is William Sila.
And I'm Ben Kitili. The top stories tonight.
Mama umechukua kuisa alafu unaweka kwa jiko, alafu unakuja alafu unaweka hapa kwa mkono.
Namuuliza kati umeamka? Hebu mka haraka ufanye kazi.
Shameless torture. The woman who punishes her house help by fire.
The ICC Kenyan case is not and has never been a judicial process. It has been a political process.
Daring the court, Jubilee MPs revive push for ICC withdrawal.
The grand Twitter war, Mutunga and Shole lock horns again.
I use a boda. That's a piki for my daily bread.
Kenya's ride to nowhere, or is it the boda man who holds a master's degree? Thank you for joining us now. A woman from Mawanga area in Nakuru County has been arrested after admitting to regularly burning a house help with a red-hot kitchen knife as a form of discipline.
She bluntly told KTN and the police that her severe forms of punishment were all in good faith to help train her 14-year-old house help and keep her in check. KTN's Kamchamanza begins our coverage tonight.
The marks on this 14-year-old girl's body, evidence of her painful experiences in a period of just 1 month since she started working for her new employer. She has been in the service of a female employer in Mawanga, Nakuru County, but she has known the kind of pain that no child should ever have to. Burns on her hands and bruises on her face. She says her employer burns her with a hot knife, not once, not twice, but regularly.
Mama umechukua kuisa alafu unaweka kwa jiko, alafu unakuja alafu unaweka hapa kwa mkono.
Moreover, she says the woman sometimes hits her head and kicks her as she mops the house. This despite the fact that she works nearly around the clock, going to bed at 1 a.m. and waking up 4 hours later at 5 a.m. every day.
Alafu umechukua hapa umechukua chuma. Alafu nigonga hapa, alafu hivi imevunjika hapa. Alafu hivi kwa kichwa, alafu sijaenda hospitali, sijapelekwa, umekataa. Kichwa yangu ni chungu.
The employer, Evelyn Atieno, was present as the girl narrated her ordeal. To our shock, the employer confirmed everything the girl told us, seemingly confident that what she was doing to the house help was nothing serious.
Unajua sasa kitu nilikuwa nataka nilikuwa nataka nimfunze, alafu aelewe. Si kwa ubaya. Sasa namuuliza kati umeamka? Hebu mka haraka ufanye kazi. Tena unashinda tu na leo na umeshinda usiku mzima. Imagine if mopping this house, you msana ata mop from 7 till morning 8 9 ajamaliza.
She says she has not taken the girl to hospital for treatment, but has been applying glycerin on the burns. And when we asked her why she has employed an underage girl in contravention of the law,
I know she's an underage, that one I know. But me I prefer an underage. They can take instructions. But the difference with this girl is, yes, kiangi. Alafu, unaona ameanza. Hivyo, sasa juu amesimama sana. Akona hiyo shida. Hata nyumba atafanguza hapa hivi, utashtukia ameanguka.
Furious neighbors outside the gate expressed their anger as one of them who had taken the initiative to report the matter said there have been screams from the house even very late in the night.
Wakati nilichungulia nikaona anatoka damu na mdomo na hapa na ameweka kwa nini? Kwa beseni ya maji imewekea nini? Sabuni. Hiyo sabuni ni pofu. Amembia kwa hizo vidonda. Hizo vidonda zilikuwa kabisa ready.
Police officers at Teachers Police Post in the area arrested the woman, and she is now set to be arraigned in court on Thursday. Kamchemenza, KTN from Nakuru County.
Crazy, unbelievably unfortunate story there from Nakuru. And the big question tonight we're asking you, do you have a house help who is under the age of 18?
Let us know if indeed you have a house help who is under the age of 18. Actually, the big question should be, would you employ a house help who is under 18? And if you would, give us your reasons, tell us why. You can tweet us at KTN Kenya, you can tweet us at Ben_Kitili, and of course at Linda Gutu. Now, immediately we got wind of this story, I asked Kenyans if they would employ an underage house help. Let's see some of the responses that we had. They were quite varied, Kenyans giving different opinions. Linda Marcel says, girls below 25 are the most stressful to deal with. From my experience, I've employed mamas for the last 5 years. I am Bila regrets, basically saying she doesn't favor the underage house helps. Let's look at the next board, if we may. Those are the opinions of Kenyans on whether or not they would employ underage house helps. I'm hoping you can get the next board, please. I asked a question on whether or not Kenyans can employ underage house helps. Edwin Semenik says, why should you have them in the first place? But if you happen to employ them, treat them like your own children. 50-50. You would have them, but you treat them as your own children. Can that work? Is that allowed under the law? We'll be asking this question to a lawyer we'll be speaking to in just a few minutes. Ochieng Ochogo says, why would you do that? They can't be easy to deal with. Maybe on the money part, what of responsibility, trust that come with it? Because there's some Kenyans that say that when you get an underage house help, the amount of money you will pay will not be that much. That is why they're favored by some households. At Machuma Gam says, anybody found with such a house help has committed a crime under our laws. Although people do, women fear mature ladies. That is a question I would like to ask women out there. Do you fear mature ladies as your house helps? Let us know what you think as well. At Patrick Kabui says, no, I wouldn't, because it amounts to child labor, which is illegal and violates child rights. Those are some of the opinions of Kenyans on whether or not they would employ an underage house help. So right now, let's bring in Paul Moman. He's a children's right lawyer. He's at our city center studio. Paul, if you can hear me, thank you for joining us on KTN Prime tonight. Looking at that story from Nakuru, Paul, what charges is this employer likely to face?
Linda, there are so many charges that can be preferred against the lady, and one of the most obvious is assault under the Penal Code, and the other one is under the Basic Education Act. For the parents of the child, they are liable because they have a duty to ensure the child is in school or to present the child to school for education. Under the Employment Act, of course, there are criminal offenses creating for employing children who are underage. But the problem with the statute is that it gives a window for children to be employed, but to do light work. The problem is that light work is not defined.
Okay, and, Paul, hold on there. It gives a room where children can be employed. Clear this for me, because there is a confusion. At what age can you employ a minor? 16, 18? What does the law say?
According to the Employment Act, a child of 13 years and above can be employed. What the law does is to categorize the kind of work they should do. But then again, the downsides of this is that the minister is supposed to gazette rules to define work that is harmful to the social development of the child.
Has the minister done that from where you stand?
No, there are no such rules. There are no such rules to date. So again, those sections, though the law has provisions, enforcement becomes a problem with the absence of defined boundaries of what light work is. Then it's open to abuse.
So basically, we do not have a law that guides on what kind of work minors can do in the country. Is that what you're telling me?
We have a law. The point I'm driving is that we have a law that protects minors, but that law empowers the minister to make rules to define the kind of work that minors should be allowed to do. But up to date, the minister has not done so.
Looking at the story, Paul, from Nakuru, of course, we have enforcement mechanisms that need to look out for these minors. Are these laws there? How enforceable are they?
The laws are there. I think the most the weakness is enforcement, because I know there are children officers in all counties, sub-counties, and I think every DO's office, or you can the Employment Act empowers anybody to report to any authority of any cases of child abuse. Not only child abuse, any suspected child abuse. Once it is reported, then investigations can be conducted and the necessary steps taken. But once again, there is an attitudinal problem with Kenyans, because we rarely report such things. And I think there is also a weakness in public awareness, because not many people know that in their sub-county there is a children's officer.
What is the role of the children's officer with regard to the story we just had in Nakuru?
The children's officer's role is to protect the rights of children under his jurisdiction. So basically, a children's officer is not somebody who is supposed to be stuck in the office. He has a duty to even conduct his own investigations, summon anybody, even write to anybody inquiring about a certain child. Why is a child not in school? And such things.
So basically, the children's officer in the county of Nakuru should have taken up this case and basically followed up on this girl. But let me try and enlighten Kenyans. If you are aware of a minor going through such an experience, what essentially should you do to try and help?
You can report to a children's officer, like I've said, to the police, the chief, or even village elders, because the law allows you to report any crime. As in, we take as in any mistreatment of children is like an ordinary crime. You can report to any authorities around your area, including a chief, a police officer. Yeah.
Lastly, Paul, before I let you go, what are the repercussions of employing a minor under the Kenyan law?
The repercussions are very
legal repercussions.
The legal repercussions. If you breach if you commit a crime, for instance, under the Basic Education Act, I think it's section 32, if you fail to take your child to school, you can be convicted to a period of not exceeding 3 years, or be liable to pay a fine of up to 100,000 shillings.
If you employ a child who's under 18, 16?
The Basic Education Act uses the language of school-going child.
So if you employ a school-going child?
If you employ a school-going child, you are liable. You are liable to pay the fine. Again, just before, there is the under the penal code. For instance, the case that has just happened in Nakuru. The lady who has confessed to assaulting the minor for her benefit should be charged with assault, which if found guilty should be convicted to a jail term of 3 years.
Right, Paul Momanyi, children's rights lawyer, speaking to us from our City Center studio. Thank you so much for helping us to understand the circumstances surrounding that story that we have just aired for you from the county of Nakuru. Let's move on now. And the Jubilee Coalition is now planning to try again to have the country withdraw from the Rome Statute. Legislators, led by the Senate and National Assembly majority leaders, say the government will take its war against the ICC to a conference of the Rome Statute member states in December. As Rita Tinina reports, the legislators who are accusing the ICC of shifting goalposts want the Hague-based court to terminate all the Kenyan cases.
National Criminal Court is now in session. The Densela Corponal International.
A day after the International Criminal Court warned the Kenyan government against what he termed as leaking classified information to the media, Jubilee legislators were taking on the Hague-based court again.
We have had enough of their way of doing things.
We are fed up, and we want to send a message to the International Criminal Court to stop the suckers immediately.
The members of parliament are accusing the ICC of shifting goalposts and pursuing a non-judicial agenda.
The ICC Kenyan case is not and has never been a judicial process. It has been a political process.
The ICC on the 8th of this month summoned President Uhuru Kenyatta to appear in person for a status conference, even as prosecutor Fatou Bensouda asked for a deferral of the case against the president to allow her collect more evidence.
It doesn't happen in criminal law. In criminal law, if you are a prosecutor, you look for evidence. When you think you have evidence, you take people to court.
The prosecutor requested the court to postpone the cases to 2017. 2017 means something to each and every Kenyan. It's the next general election.
The legislators want the ICC to terminate the Kenyan cases and are banking on a December meeting to have another shot at having the country withdraw from the ICC.
The first place our train will stop is the Rome Statute Conference, Status Parties Conference in December. Because we are a member of the Rome Statute, we have an equal membership just like some other countries in Western countries have. That is where we will take our home.
The quest to disengage from the ICC has been a long, drawn-out process that began in 2011 when the government challenged the admissibility of the Kenyan cases before the ICC. The same year saw the then Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka engage in shuttle diplomacy to try and have the Kenyan cases deferred. Last year, Parliament approved a motion to have Kenya withdraw from the ICC. The African Union in a summit in Addis Ababa also demanded a deferral of the Hague trial against President Uhuru Kenyatta. It also passed a resolution stating that no sitting African head of state should appear before the ICC. And the latest move by legislators may just add to the list of efforts by Kenya to cut ties with the ICC. Lawyers and anti-ICC forces say that a withdrawal from the ICC will not shield either President Uhuru Kenyatta or his deputy William Ruto from prosecution at The Hague. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Meanwhile, court leader Raila Odinga has thrown his weight behind the decision to have cabinet secretaries ignore summonses by the National Assembly. Speaking on his return from Mozambique, where he was an election observer, Raila, however, rapped the National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi for what he calls blatant disregard for court orders. Wilson Buru has that story.
It has been 3 weeks since court leader Raila Odinga was in the country, having travelled to the United States for seminars and to Mozambique as an election observer during the just concluded national polls. On his return, the former Prime Minister decided to weigh in on a couple of issues. The tug of war between the National Assembly and the executive has been in the headlines in the recent past after President Uhuru Kenyatta ordered his cabinet secretaries to ignore summonses by the MPs to appear in the House. This did not go down well with the MPs, but surprisingly, the CSs have received Raila's backing, with the court leader stating that there is a clear separation of powers between the executive and parliament.
They are not members of parliament, therefore you should never invite them to come and intimidate them into the floor of the whole house. A view that is not right.
Raila also took issue with the National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi after Muturi insinuated once again that court injunctions would not affect how Parliament conducts its business.
Yeye anajifanya kama mtu ambaye hajasoma. Na ni wakili ambaye amekuwa hata kwenye mahakama. Uamuzi wa mahakama mpaka heshimiwe kama tunataka kuwa na amani katika taifa letu.
At the same time, Raila congratulated President Uhuru Kenyatta for his decision to travel to The Hague for the status conference on his case. The court leader noted that it was important for the country not to be put through the same scenario as Sudan, whose President Omar al-Bashir has an arrest warrant against him. However, Raila says too many theatrics accompanied the president's travel.
So what was so special about going to the ICC? And go there, and the Vice President will be acting. So there's no need, in my view, of calling the whole Parliament, saying I'm handing over. And then you hand over the motorcade, an exercise which would have been done in the State House, in the full view of everybody. What for? I mean, the presidency does not consist of the motorcade.
The former Prime Minister says in the coming days there will be more communication on the progress of the Okoa Kenya campaign and the signature collection exercise. Wilson Buru, KTN Prime.
A public exchange ensued today on the social media platform Twitter between former Chief Registrar Gladys Sholei and Chief Justice Dr. Willie Mutunga.
Now, the center of the row is a multi-million shilling residence that was meant to be the official residence of the CJs, but which is the subject of an investigation by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission.
Betty Kialo has the details.
She has been missing from the limelight since the judiciary row that forced her out of office. But now Gladys Sholei is back, on Twitter that is. Early Tuesday morning, and the Chief Justice posted on his Twitter handle something to the effect that he did not have any official residence and that since he was appointed as CJ, he has been living in a rented house. He adds that his house allowance is 100,000 shillings, which is taxed. Gladys Sholei immediately fired back. I am extremely shocked at how a respectable member and president of an arm of government would openly lie, she tweeted, attaching a document apparently indicating that the Chief Justice had made a request to the then head of public service, Francis Muthaura, to have an official residence. To this, Mutunga sent his tweet saying, at Gladys Sholei, my two tweets stated the truth. That letter to F. Muthaura does not prove otherwise. Sholei's response, at W. Mutunga, 4 months after coming to office, was already begging / demanding for a residence. If he requested, why has he not moved in? She posed. Former presidential aspirant Martha Karua also joined in the exchange as the Twitter war got more vicious. Karua questioned why the CJ had not moved into his house that is said to have been built at 310 million shillings. To this, the CJ responded saying the house was under scrutiny by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission because of corruption allegations. The house, which is in the leafy Rundas suburb, was purchased in 2013. Sholei insists that the deal was approved by the Judicial Service Commission, and even today she posted what she said was a copy of the minutes that documented the approval, saying transactions to purchase the house were already completed by the judiciary but later halted when investigations by the ICC commenced. But Wednesday afternoon, the Chief Justice sent a statement to newsrooms indicating that the purchase of the 310 million shillings house was never completed by the judiciary owing to suspected corruption. And the jury remains out on how and when this war that seems to get uglier by the day will end. Betty Kialo, KTN.
Now, the government has released a total of 12 billion shillings for free primary and day secondary education. As Catherine Omwanthu reports, the money comes ahead of the much-anticipated talks between the government and the teachers' union on teachers' salary demands.
Deputy President William Ruto made this announcement only 2 days before the make-or-break meeting between government, the Teachers Service Commission, the Kenya National Union of Teachers, and the Kenya Union of Post-Primary School Teachers.
Free primary by about 4 billion shillings, free secondary by about 8 billion shillings this year going forward. We've also made it possible for all our children to do examinations without paying examination fees.
Since the introduction of free primary school education, standards of learning are said to have gone down, the most worrying being that in most public schools it's one teacher to at least 40 pupils. The 12 billion shillings is meant to go a long way into improving education facilities in the public school sector.
We expect all our head teachers and school management boards to make sure that these resources that are made available by the Kenya government is put to good use so that Kenyans get good value for that money.
And perhaps to cool the tempers before the October 24th meeting between teachers' union and the government.
We have set up the necessary infrastructure for that engagement, and I want to single out our representatives of teachers for agreeing with us that this is an important occasion and this is a good moment. And this is a solemn moment for our Kenyan children to have examinations. and we will continue engaging and allow our children to carry out their examinations without interruption.
On Friday, teachers' unions are waiting to see if the government will increase teachers' salaries, with Kuppet threatening to go on strike if Treasury comes to the negotiating table empty-handed. Meanwhile, some members of parliament have rejected a recent ban by the Cabinet Secretary of Education that restricts the building or opening of new schools across the country.
We would rather have schools opened waiting for students to come. Because that creates opportunity through which access to education is afforded in this country.
The rationale behind subjecting the new schools to either closure, because if you deny them the registration, it means you are closing down these schools, I think was ill-advised. And what we are actually asking the Ministry of Education is that let Kenyans decide on whether they want to create more schools depending on the demand of the grounds. Like if you are to look across the country, you realize there are some areas which actually still have very few schools.
According to the Kenya National Union of Teachers, the country needs at least 100,000 more teachers to fill the current gap in the basic education sector. Catherine Omwanto, KTN.
Let's stay with education matters now. Even as the government struggles to keep teachers happy and learners toil through the 844 system, there is another side of the Kenyan education system which has caused much shedding of tears and gnashing of teeth among hundreds of thousands of graduates. For instance, what would you say if you met a Kenyan with a master's degree who operates a motorcycle taxi for a living? You might think it is a joke until you watch the following story of one David Ananda.
4-year-old David Ananda exits his house ready for the day's hustle. This is another day among many for David, who has a degree in divinity from St. Paul's University and a master's from Korea. He spends hours on the road ferrying passengers to various destinations, all to ensure he puts food on the table.
I use a boda. That's a piki for my daily bread. So I carry people, and then maybe in a day I can get sometimes 700, sometimes 500. And the most amazing thing is that the piki belongs to my brother, who is younger than me. So he's like my employer.
David represents many graduates who are yet to reap the full benefits of Kenya's education system. Dr. Okwacha Bagi argues that most graduates absorbed in the labor market have jobs that don't match their qualifications.
So there's a mismatch between our education system at the university and what the employers are looking for.
Actually not doing exactly what I trained for, and I think maybe many people share the same predicament.
31-year-old Matthew perhaps fits well into the shoes David is wearing. He currently works as a driver, although he specialized in mechanical engineering.
If your work, what you have studied for will come on your way, the best thing, thank God. But if it doesn't, just do anything. One day, one time, God will come, and maybe you'll find yourself doing what you love doing most, or what you have studied for.
Matthew may, however, be among the lucky few who have found something to do. Education scholars and researchers reckon that only 25% of university graduates get meaningful employment in the Kenyan job market, leaving a whopping 75% to fend for themselves. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics pegs university enrollment in 2013 at 201,690 for public universities and 37,672 for accredited private universities. Meaning, nearly 250,000 students joined institutions of higher learning just last year alone. A similar number is estimated to graduate after completing their studies. These numbers, experts say, may mean more graduates missing a place in the job market. Manifestation of graduate unemployment results from lack of needed skills among new recruits in the workplace, discrepancies between graduate expectations and market reality, lack of work experience, and inadequate labor market information.
There is definitely need to tailor-make the curriculum of our universities so that the people we churn out, all these students we churn out every year, really get employed somewhere.
David was once forced to apply for a cleaning position at a company in Western Kenya. He was, however, rejected on the basis of overqualification.
The HR looked at me and then he said, David, if I give you such kind of work, I'll be guilty the rest of my life. So it's not easy for me to give you such kind of job. And in fact, if I was to give you such kind of job, people would not see the value in education.
The master's graduate fears the education system is tailored the wrong way.
If people go to such kind of level of academic excellence and then they get nothing, then at the end of the day, it means that people will not value education as such. It will just be a by the way.
He says graduates must now make do with what they have at their disposal. Timothy Otieno, KTN.
Thank you, Timothy. Made under fire is a hashtag on Twitter. Our big question tonight: would you employ a house help who is under the age of 18?
And why? Let us know what you think. You can tweet us at KTN Kenya, at Ben_Kitili, and at Linda Ogutu. Let me see what some of you are saying. At Dr. Kenneth Ameo says, an underage house help is more or less juvenile or underdeveloped in character to function as a worker.
Patrick Olishula says a story of maid under fire is saddening. Truly there are many women, but just a few mothers.
Josephat Okora says women view let me take that again. Josephat says women view mature women as competitors. That's why they'd rather have the young girls as house helps.
And Bernardo Buga says no, because it amounts to child labor, which is against the law. Let children attend school as required.
Those are your opinions on whether or not you would employ an underage house help in your house. Let us know what you think. We'll keep sampling your views during this bulletin. We thank you for staying with KTN Prime. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back.
Just ahead, the water party begins. Are things finally looking up for Turkana?
You're watching KTN Prime.
Here in KTN Prime, let's focus our attention now at the coast. And leaders in Lamu County have condemned the move by the Inspector General to further extend the curfew in the county.
Well, they state that the curfew has negatively affected economic activities in the area, and they now want the national government to either lift this ban or declare a national crisis in the county and move in to provide residents with financial aid.
Despite the Law Society of Kenya's threat to go to court in 2 weeks to sue the Inspector General over curfew in Lamu County,
I strongly caution members of the public to desist from venturing into the above-mentioned areas when the curfew is in force.
he did just the opposite, extending the curfew up to the 23rd of November. This being the third time the curfew is being extended. For the fourth month now, residents of Lamu County are expected to be indoors between 6:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. No businesses are allowed to operate outdoors within this time, a situation which local leaders state has led to increased poverty and crime in the area.
Is it legal to impose an open-ended curfew for over 4 months? What guarantees do we have that even after the fourth month, if they have not been able to apprehend those who committed these heinous crimes, that this curfew will now just be continuing?
What is going on is unfair, is very, very bad, and we are saying enough is enough.
The leaders say that the county has lost up to $500 million Kenya shillings since the curfew was imposed, stating that tourism and fishing, which form the backbone of the country's economy, have been hardest hit. The annual Lamu Cultural Festival will apparently not be taking place this year due to the curfew.
If there is any community in Lamu County which they are happy with the curfew, let them express their feeling and let the curfew be kept in their areas.
We have lost over 2,000 jobs. A number of hotels, they have laid off a big number of their workers.
They are proposing that the curfew be only implemented in the areas affected by the attacks, including Mpeketoni and Hindi. But should the national government be adamant on upholding the curfew, they say that it should also be ready to financially support the residents or fight it out in court.
Our plea is that we should have a phased removal of the caveat. We know perhaps that there could be some threats.
The curfew was imposed to allow police operations in trying to nab perpetrators of the Mpeketoni, Kibaoni and Hindu attacks believed to be hiding within the Boni forest. Shalma Manyi, KTN.
Let's move on to some good news. To more than 346,000 residents in Turkana County were categorized as food and water insecure by the National Drought Management Authority.
After the discovery of billions of liters of fresh water under the Turkana County, plans for harvesting of the water and irrigation of farms have kicked off, with 5 boreholes already sunk at Napu area of Lodwar. Masikandie has the details.
Treasure, an eruption of an otherwise rare and precious resource in the vast drylands of Turkana County. What is not a familiar scene from the vast Turkana region? Everyone getting as much as they can. This is one of the 5 boreholes at Napu within Lodwar area.
Hii chakula tunapanda saa hii atasaidia sisi sana kwa njia yote. Sisi tutaonekana kama ni wanawake wa Turkana.
Someone finally walked the talk in beginning to harvest the rich aquifer with billions of liters of fresh water in the underbelly of Turkana County. And today, Napu residents enjoy the rare commodity. The older generation especially, they know too well of this resource, what they missed, and the huge benefit it would have for the future generations.
Tutapoteza njaa ambao kila wakati sisi ni watu wa kuombaomba chakula kutoka kwa rafiki ambao kutoka nje. Lakini sasa kuanzia wakati huu sasa tunaamini ya kwamba kama tutapunguliwa hii maji ambao iko katika sehemu hii ya Napu, tutapata chakula.
Napu is in Lotikipi Plains, where 207 billion cubic liter aquifer was discovered last year by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. The government plans to use the massive groundwater reserves under Turkana to irrigate 200,000 hectares at Napu. The Kerio Valley Development Authority kick-starting with a pilot project of 130 hectares.
One of our mandates under the regional development authorities, the ministry, is to support sustainable food security. And one activity that we'll do here is to ensure that the people of Napu will no longer need food aid, but they can grow their own food, feed themselves, and have enough surplus to sell to Lodwar town.
We're looking at cereals, all types of cereals. We're looking at fruits. We're also looking at vegetables. So, we'll try whichever is okay.
The aim is to produce more than 12 million bags of maize in the next 2 years, a move that could cut the country's maize deficit by 40%. Kenya consumes about 30 million bags of maize annually, and the residents here hope that with that amount of food in their stores, cases of cattle rustling will reduce.
Nafikiri mambo ya uhalifu ya watu kwenda kuibaiba mali za watu itakuwa napungua, maana kila mtu atakuwa analima.
Already more than 500 solar panels of 240 volts each have been mounted in the area to keep the 5 boreholes operational. The solar panel will help to pump 1,000 liters of water a minute and will be expected to serve private farms as well. Marcy Kandie, KTN, Turkana County.
Good evening. My name is Joy Dorinbira. Let's take a look at today's business stories. Kenya's property market is on a rebound following a low interest rate regime that has seen improved earnings for investors in the country's lucrative real estate market. According to the findings of the latest quarterly index by real estate consulting firm Has Consult, Kenya's property market is showing signs of recovery from the harsh interest rates in 2011 and 2012, which had caused a slump in developments. Here now, Charles Gitonga reports on how this will come as a welcome relief to those buying, renting or building houses.
For a long time, housing rents have been on an upward trend, a factor that has contributed to the high cost of living. However, the third quarter property index by Has Consult shows that overall rents have grown at the lowest in the last 3 months since 2011 at just 0.4%. This slowdown, they say, is expected to persist and consumers will witness stable rents going forward. At the same time, house asking prices remain static, growing at 3.1% during the quarter compared to the 4.7% realized during the same quarter last year. The prices were strongest for apartments, which rose by 3.6%, followed by detached houses, whose prices were up 3.2%, and those of semi-detached houses rising by 2.4%. Combined easing off comes at a time when investors are witnessing high returns. This is because of high demand as the market recovers from a time lag in new building caused by the high interest rates of 2011 and 2012. The total returns on let properties are now highest for the semi-detached houses at 16%, followed by apartments at 13% and detached houses at 10%.
The average yield on housing bought to rent out was 11%. This represents a high earning investment up against the array of all asset classes in Kenya and in fact globally.
The third quarter of the year has also been characterized by scenes of investors selling off their property to avoid new tax obligations come next year when the capital gains tax will be introduced at 5%. Industry observers, however, say the new levies will not have a long-term effect on the properties market. Charles Gitonga, KTN.
Kenya Power has recorded a 55% increase in pre-tax profit in its 2014 financial year. During the period ended June, the power distributor saw its pre-tax profit hit 10.2 billion shillings, driven by increased sales of electricity and higher tariffs that saw revenues hit 105.3 billion shillings during the year. Kenya Power is on a capital expenditure drive to improve power supply in the country and during the period spent 27.95 billion shillings. The board has recommended a 50 cents per share dividend, which will come as welcome relief for shareholders who last year went without a dividend. And now we'll take a look at Recapitalizing, and Family Bank is planning to join the raft of banks seeking to raise additional capital to meet the new capital requirements set out by the Central Bank of Kenya. The bank wants to raise 3 billion shillings it will use to meet the new prudential requirements that come into force in 2015 and fund its expansion plan throughout the country. And as Adelaide Chengole reports, it's not the only bank looking to raise additional capital.
'Tis the season to be jolly. Well, it is if you are an investor. Kenyan banks are falling over themselves as they rush to meet the central bank's new capital adequacy requirements ahead of the 2015 deadline.
The central bank, as a regulator, is asking the banks to put in more and more capital.
But why is this? The answer lies in the 2008 global financial crisis. The meltdown has precipitated a fundamental change in the regulation of the financial sector, with more stringent rules placed on the financial services providers globally. And in Kenya, CBK is also stepping up regulation to increase stability of the financial sector. And now many of the country's banks have begun capital drives to meet the enhanced requirements ahead of the deadline.
The central bank is now requiring that all the banks have a buffer of 2.5% above the current statutory rate of 12%. So come January 1 next year, we'll be maintaining a ratio of 14.5%.
Lenders such as FINA and Chase Bank have found strategic investors to pump in the requisite capital. Others like Diamond Trust Bank and the NIC Bank have issued a bond and also tapped existing shareholders through rights issues to get the funds. And now Family Bank is joining the fray. The bank is planning to issue an additional 125 million shares priced at 25 shillings to the bank's 6,000 shareholders. Current shareholders have a right to buy 1 share for every 9 already held. Part of the proceeds will be used to meet the new capital adequacy requirements, but a percentage will go towards funding its expansion plan and upgrading its IT infrastructure. In 2012, the lender raised 1.2 billion shillings by issuing 40.5 million shares. But going forward, the bank says it might consider going public to access financing for expansion.
Timing it nicely so that when we list, the existing shareholders will have the maximum value. So, but we do hope to list in not very long time from here.
Adelaide Chengole, KTN Business.
And Kenya Commercial Bank has rolled out an online campaign dubbed Joe for Zero, targeting individuals with a dream to own a home for as low as 250,000 shillings. Here's more.
The digital campaign that runs between October 2014 and January 2015 will require home buyers to apply and pre-qualify for mortgage loans between 300,000 and 20 million shillings at 0% interest from the bank. Customers will provide a sketch or photograph of their dream home that will be uploaded on the bank's portal for fans to watch, and the customer with the highest number of views and votes will win the challenge that is targeting individuals with intention of owning a home. KCB Mortgages Director Sam Muturi added that the campaign also aims at rewarding loyalty. Outside the campaign, KCB charges between 12.9% and 105% for financing on mortgages.
And that's it for business. Some joy during Bira. Good night.
KTN Business.
Would you employ a house help who is under 18 and why? That was our big question tonight.
Njoki Kangende says, no, I wouldn't. It is wrong and illegal. It amounts to taking advantage of the poor.
Arukelo 70 says, employing a minor as we have many unemployed youth, that is nonsense.
Boniface Mudhoni says, our family values are normal. How many people knew the child was employed and said nothing?
Adbithia Tino says, no way I would give the job to a woman who can be accountable like in her own house.
Kipkiru Arapkari wants to help, says she needs urgent hospitalization. Provide any contact her in Nakuru, will take her.
At Rawlings asks a question, is there child labor if one can employ a 13-year-old child?
Mageto Elijah says, let's treat everyone with love and care. Give the underage education, not employment.
Finally, at Mativo says, it's not about underage, but our psychological instability as employers.
Thank you for participating in a big question tonight and for joining us on the program.
Indeed, we'll see you tomorrow. I'm Linda Ogutu. Have a good night.
I'm Ben Kitili. Jeff Koinange Live begins right now. Jeff?
Thank you, Ben and Linda. That's right. Today's Wednesday, and you know on JKL, it's all about politics, and more politics. But guess what? We're avoiding the politicians, but talking issues, in particular, corruption. So my guest tonight is a woman of many firsts. First woman chairman of the Kenya NGO Council, first woman rally driver. She was Miss Kenya or Miss East Africa at the age of 16. And now she's a farmer in Kitale, Trans Nzoia County. And she speaks her mind. You're going to want to listen to what Oriero Gomanduli has to say tonight. Don't pay too much attention to the headgear, because it's going to fill your TV screen. Listen to what she has to say about corruption. JKL coming up. Start tweeting at Koinange Jeff. The hashtag is JKL. And JKL will be back after a few commercial breaks. Back in a moment.